Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the Improvisational Storytelling Podcast. We tell stories, you listen to stories, and get inspired to write novels, giving us all the credit. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to give you ideas. We know you listen, Stephen King. Please return my emails. So here we are in our second episode. Does someone want to give a recap, or do you want me to give the recap? So it was a dark and stormy night. No, so this is the sequel to the Heroes from the Future, I think. No, Heroes from the Past, I think is what we ended up calling the story before this story. And if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to it. We're going to lightly reference it, but we're not going to sit and rehash the whole thing. This is a couple years, I'd say somewhere like 500 or so years after the end of that story. If you guys remember, at the end of that one, basically a bunch of people had left Earth hundreds or thousands of years ago to sort of seed other planets, and in the interim, they had kind of changed. So when they come back, they seem kind of alien, but they are all humanoid. And at the end of that story, after sort of they defeated, was it Tyrone was the bad guy in the last one?
Tyrone, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They defeated him and all these crazy things had happened and they came back into orbit. That was kind of the last thing that really was said about that story. And here we are now, a couple hundred years later, and the aliens, I should call them outworlders or otherworlders, because they're not aliens, they're humans, but they've just adapted and changed over the years to basically be alien-like. I
think that's what you started using last time was Outworlders or...
Yeah, Outworlders are good, I think. They have attempted to help the humans who live on Earth, the Earthlings, sort of rekindle the once great civilization that they had. We kind of went back and forth a couple of times trying to figure out the best way that they were doing that. We oscillated on they were the bad guys and they were like using humans. And then I said that they should be the good guys who want to help humanity, but they do it in an inefficient way because they are still, even though they're all human descent, the Outworlders are still have a couple thousand years of their own sort of way of doing things, right? So some might come and want to preserve the Earth, and so they spend dozens of years on conservation. And then other ones might come and want to really help the people, reach their highest physical potential. And so there's like this huge push for human, and what it ends up doing is it ends up creating kind of a resentful, kind of bitter population who in some ways feel like, and in some ways it's presented like they are under crazy and Jurassic alien tyranny, right? And so our villain is essentially going to be a rebel who is trying to free us from the tyranny. That was the sequel, which Seth had. I had beginning scene, which had a character having a dream about kind of looking over the city from a high place and thinking it kind of looked like a circuit board, and then having a giant being sort of come out of the ocean and there being like a great buzzing and he like destroying the land, and then his face came out and it was the guy who was having the dream, and then he kind of woke up and he was in the city and he was kind of wondering what that meant. And then Reed's was, what was yours, Reed?
It was a magic system, and
right.
I called it divine empowerment, heralded by angelic beings.
Right. And this is hearkening back to the previous story where people had sort of in this post-apocalyptic world that we were previously writing in, people had pretty much rejected a divine, and in the place of a logical or a physical system, and people had begun to realize that with emphasis and intent on beauty and honor that how do we say this? Efforts could be uplifted into more powerful actions. Does that explain it, Reed?
Yep.
And so that is Reed's that's Reed's magic system sort of moving over into this new place that we are now. Does this sound like a good did I do a good recap, boss?
That's good.
All right, 1 gold star
sounds good.
on the recap chart for me. What story elements did you guys have?
A unique pet.
I have Wise Old Man.
All right, I have, what did I have? Ka-Tet members,
Ka-Tet.
which I'm very interested in doing. So who wants to go first? Does anyone have any world building ideas they want to add in? Here we are at the second episode of this one. Anyone have any interesting things to add in?
I don't have any direct world building things, but I'm ready with mine if you guys, want to wait a second. I mean, not like to, unless Reed or Levi, you really want to jump in on yours.
I've been thinking about the the world as it sits. And have either of you guys read the book Snow Crash?
No, I've just heard you talk about it a little.
Seth, have you read it?
I don't. It sounds familiar, but again, it could just be because you were talking about it.
It's a very strange book, and I would advise that anyone who's over 18 read it. And if you're not, wait until you're 18, because it's pretty violent. But in it, there's a kind of a unique setup where corporations kind of own everything, and not like in the idea of like, yeah, corporations own everything, but like every time you enter into a gated community or a suburb, your passport gets scanned and you're entering a different country, right? Every time you enter into a restaurant, it's like owned. It's like this is the restaurant that's owned by the mafia. It's a pizza place, and everyone knows it. And it's like, and when you're on the grounds, if you're enemies with the pizza place, with the mafia, then they'll like kill you because you're in their like country. So everything's, and like you can only drive on certain roads at certain times, or if you're part of certain organizations, because the roads are owned, and the federal government like still tries to pretend like they're in power, but they can't, and they are really bad at like being in power because they've ceded so much. Anyways, this kind of cyberpunk, ultra commercialized, but also ultra commodified system, because these outworlders built back the world much quicker than people developed it themselves, right? We oftentimes think about a world like Star Trek, which is a post-scarcity civilization, right? It's not communist in government type. It feels like it a little bit because it's post-scarcity, because there are no poor people, because there is no scarcity of resources, right? The opportunity is so abundant that everyone is, in fact, successful, right? It's a utopia. I don't think it's actually possible to achieve here on Earth, but it's an interesting idea. But if you were to take people who didn't, like if you were to take people from this day and age and bring them to a post-scarcity place, they would break it. And that's kind of what happened. That's kind of my brain thought with this city. It's a city that's ultra high technology that's been just put in place, but the people are only a couple hundred years out of post-apocalyptic Mad Max style fighting. Right. And so people are constantly coming in from the country, and the city keeps swelling, but it doesn't. There's still slums, even though there's like cleaning robots that clean everything all the time. There's still slums, and there's still things, it's not the Outworlders brought a sort of post-scarcity mentality, because that's where they're all living in, all their civilizations are living in. But this city does not exist in that place yet. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's kind of a world building thing that I was thinking about. It's this, there's a black market for some things. There's still bad people doing bad things. And this is just increased by the fact that like all these outworlders there's bad guys in them too, right? They have their own underground mafias and stuff like they have their own things. And they come to Earth because Earth is like this new ground, this new place to put in new roots, to figure new stuff out. And so the city kind of becomes a hotbed for crime, but like soft crime or easily covered crime, you know what I mean? And it's very easy to pass over like 6 people sort of shot up in the street when 15 minutes after they are shot up, like robots come and take the bodies away and like scrub the ground free of blood. You know, it's like, it's easy to forget that that's a thing, that happens when it can just be moved on so quickly via technology. And so that's kind of think of it like a noir, kind of space age noir kind of, you guys have never played Cyberpunk, but kind of a cyberpunk, think maybe a little bit like Judge Dredd style of thing, if that makes sense. These are vibes that I'm feeling for this specifically because of my Ka-Tet members, which I'm going to tell you about right now. So this guy, I don't know who he is. He can be the hero if we want. He doesn't have to be the hero. But this guy is one of the Ka-Tet members. So a Ka-Tet is a group of people pushed together, moved together, or moved along by Ka or destiny. This comes from the Dark Towers series by Stephen King. Stephen, I know you're listening. Please respond to my emails. I want to know what happens to Roland at the end of the Dark Tower series. Anyway, so this is a thing that he wrote about in his in his book, The Dark Tower series, and I was so stricken by it that I have decided to add it into our rotation. So it's people who are bound together or moved together by Ka or destiny or fate, the sort of inexorable wind that moves the world along and keeps things going. Sometimes people are willing, most of the time they are not. And Ka is like a wind. Ka is also like a wheel that crushes you and conforms you. The best thing you can do is to give up your own ideas about how you want to order your life and instead embrace the place that Ka is bringing you. There's more sanity that way, less insanity. So who are a Ka-Tet is typically 3. So classically we've had it been 3. So I'm going to have it be 3. So we have our lead, this guy who had this dream. His first name is Chase. His middle name is Alan, and his last name is Person. So he's Chase A. Person, and he is sort of a low-level engineer, except he has a terrible secret. He, in order to get into this engineering program, in order to, make money and try and start a life for himself, he has purchased illegal augmentations. And what these illegal augmentations are first off, they're high-grade medical equipment from Outworlder groups. There's lots of different Outworlders, and all of them are humanoid in style, but they aren't perfectly human anymore. They aren't exactly human anymore. And so their medical equipment doesn't work perfectly with us. It kind of works on some things. So you tend to need, like a Venusaurian a diagnostic machine, but then for the surgery, you use the Kuiper Belt group's surgical equipment. And then for suturing, you use the, Andromeda Federation's suturing, so it's like you have to use all of their different types of machines. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And what he did is it's supposed to be a very simple and very straightforward procedure. What you do is you get a neural link installed, and then you acquire some of the material that the nanobots that saved Earth from nuclear fallout and that Teach used to fight off Tyrone in the last book. part of the offset was that when they were used up, and the ones that sort of ate the radiation became like Seth was talking about it last week, became like a precious gem or like a special mineral. And you use that because it has the trace sort of DNA of the highly advanced engineering systems that humanity would have used before. And you use that as a data set to basically teach your brain how to understand human technology very quickly. Human being earthling technology. Because that's what the Outworlders are trying to do, is not just give earthlings technology, but teach them how to rediscover their own technology. Because there's like dozens of satellites and mining vessels like out in the solar system that are just off right now. And once earthlings can get to the place of learning how, they can just turn these things back on and like they'll be able to make leaps and bounds. Anyways, the problem is that Chase shares a really unique genetic marker with his great-great-great-great-grandfather, Teach, right? He has no idea. He doesn't know that. He's looking back and seeing that. And what happens is while Teach was using the nanobots back in the other book, they were copying his consciousness into themselves, right? It's just one of the functions that they did in case he ever were to suffer great biological distress, as they would put it, death, right? And so what they do is, because they recognize this unique genetic structure in Chase, they say, oh, he's back. So they bring forth all of the nanobots that were saved specifically to hold his consciousness, and they bring them to him. And then there's Chase, inexorably tied to his great-great-great-great-great-grandson, right? His consciousness is like 2 weeks before he fights the Tyrone. That's when it was finished, and the nanobots went into deep storage. But now this guy's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is here and is like created out of nanobots. And then the AI that did the work, that sort of directed these, is the kind of third kind of string that binds Teach and Chase together, and it has its own personality, having been sort of in dormancy, but also having been like learning and studying Chase's sort of neural network for, hundreds of years. It kind of has its own kind of 3CPO, R2D2 level, cynical, fun, humorous. So that's the Ka-Tet members. What do you think, Seth?
Trying to wrap my head around it here. So Chase is not like, he's not harboring like the recreated consciousness of his grandfather.
No, it was just, it recognized the genetic markers and sort of assumed that one of his descendants must be like calling him up, basically, by putting, because what you get this neural link, that he got installed, and then he got some of this, what was the nanite leftover material, and put it in there for it to analyze and basically teach his brain how to understand it. And what it did instead was say, oh, it's calling up. We recognize these. There's enough of these genetic markers. We recognize this is here. All right, bring him back. It's time. And it's a bit of Ka too, Ka doesn't have to explain to anyone why it does the things it does. It was just,
So, but this is a unique, separate individual then.
Yeah. My idea would be is that there's in some way inexorably tied together, at this point in time when it first kind of happens, the only thing containing Teach's consciousness is these 250,000 flying nanobots. And because they're kind of connected to Teach, my idea would be is that he can't go too far. They can't go too far away from each other, right? And that eventually it gets to a place where like everyone's kind of living in Chase's head, It's like the nanobots kind of live on the skin around Chase's ear and around his eyes. And so Teach can like see and hear, and he just talks to Chase like constantly. And then the AI is there. And at first, Chase is very like, I'm going insane. I'm one of the 2% that like when they get augmentations, they like turn into a monster. That's what's happening to me. And slowly through the story, he kind of realizes, no, I'm not, something else. And then it kind of gets revealed as it goes along. Does that make sense?
Okay, so he's not, yeah.
So like,
it's not like he's physically there, other people can see him. It's just something that's, as it would be, living inside of Chase's head.
Technically, although there is a digital aspect to it. If the right technology was sort of presented, Teach could be downloaded into a server, and then a new body could be made for him and he could be put into it. If all of that technology could be aligned from all the different outworlders, that could happen. But it's not like he is only in his head and he can't get out. It's more so like Teach is himself really kind of shocked at the whole thing. It's like, to him, he went to sleep and thought, okay, we're heading towards where Tyrone's building the pyramids. We're about 2 weeks away, and he goes to sleep, and then he wakes up and he is like, has all this extra sensory understanding, and he's looking and he sees this person, and everything is like, it's like waking up in a new place, in a new time, with a totally different body and a totally different understanding. But Teach has done this before, this is a thing
right.
that he's done before. So he adjusts to it very quickly, and he's the hero now, right? When he first woke up the first time in our previous story, he wasn't the hero, but he's the hero now, or he was the hero in his story. And so the wisdom and the patience and the honor and the grace and the ability to keep a level head all exists. And now maybe he feels like his job is to, once the AI kind of explained to him what happened, now his job is to be this thing, or be this Charlie, like Charlie was to him, to be this Charlie for this descendant that he has no concept of who, or even like, he's like, descendant, I don't ever remember doing the midnight dance with anybody. It's like, oh, well, no, that hasn't happened yet. And he's like, oh, okay. I wonder who it was, because I don't know. Like we didn't have anything in his life romantically. So it's, but he's able to adjust to it very quickly. And then he is kind of the Roland character going to Dark Tower again, who very quickly sort of turns to Ka and says, I have fought Ka before. I will not fight Ka this time. Like, I've fought it 100 times before and I've lost 100 times. This is the 101st time. This time I'm going to turn into the wind instead of trying to fight the wind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm still a little unclear about this. I'm like, my mind's trying to picture, the AI that manages this neural link, right? But kind of has a mind of his own. How did that enter the picture? Like,
so there were never, you can't, each little individual nanobot does not have the processing power by itself,
right,
to make decisions on a macro level, right? So there has to be a giant controlling forecaster, right? Whether this AI lives on a server, on a satellite that's in a deep orbit around Earth, whether he lives at the bottom of the ocean and has antennas that can reach the whole world. Basically, he is the one who sort of interfaced with Teach in the earlier books. He is the one who made sure that Teach had all of the nanobots at his disposal. He's the one who recognized Teach for what he was and helped him along his journey, right? He never had a name before because he didn't need a name, because he hadn't spent a couple hundred years sort of studying the neural network of Teach and kind of trying to copy it or trying to mimic it, trying to figure out what makes humans so different. And, and now his personality kind of emerges because he has done all this work, and Teach trusts the winds of fate nearly hands down. And so by proxy, you could almost call this AI also Teach's son, except he learned by mimicry and not because of any genetics. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it was happening behind the scenes in the first book. We weren't really given any insight into what this AI was doing. And now it sort of is allowed to rear its head because that's my answer.
Okay.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, everybody.
We kind of alluded to a character in the last story, the last episode that was, part of law enforcement here on Earth, and then has the task of interfacing with law enforcement of the Outworlders, and there needing to be cooperation, and I got the idea that his job was to quell down turf wars, like the kind of set in their ways, earthbound cops kind of resent, the infringement on their territory of these Outworlder cops, but it's necessary to interface with them because they're, turning the world upside down with the tech,
right?
With the tech upgrades and whatnot. And so I'm trying to see where he fits in here with Chase, but it'll show up, I guess.
So do we feel like Chase needs to be the hero, or should Chase be somebody else? I kind of feel like this cop guy should be the hero, and I don't know if Chase should be him.
Yeah, I'm thinking that because that's an element of this story that I think we don't want to lose.
Right. Have you guys seen the TV show Heroes?
I have seen a couple episodes.
Some of it years ago.
Yeah, I'm actually rewatching it. I'm on season 3. It's very good. It's really old and kind of cheesy for the oldness. I say old as in early 2000s, but it's still, I think it holds up for some of the acting. Anyways, there's these two brothers, right? And both of them want to do what's right. But one of them is willing to do a lot of bad in order to do what's right. And one of them is wants to run the absolute straight and narrow, do what's right. And constantly each one is forced to, how do I say this? Not compromise on his morals, but the one that is okay with doing something bad in order to do something good, can't at the end. And the one who will only do what's right gets tricked into doing bad things because he believes in people and trusts people too easily, right? And it's it's this beautiful picture that human beings are flawed, right? We can be tricked, we can be manipulated into doing what we think is right but is actually wrong. And we should always be willing to repent of the things that we were going to do that were wrong, right? But we should never think that means that we can't do what's right with the next step. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes.
And so my thought is what if this is a brother situation, right? What if one of the brothers is this Chase and another one of the brothers is this, I was going to say Catch, but you can't, that's not a good name for a person. But another one is this kind of police officer, this kind of liaison with the Outworlders, hated by the community, but kind of a morally, come on, what's the word? Lawful good, kind of won't compromise at all. And the other one, Chase, is more of the anti-hero who does what's right, but kind of begrudgingly, is kind of freaked out by these things that are happening to him. And this hero, our hero, his older brother or his younger brother, is this kind of hated by the community, but really wants to do what's right kind of guy who trusts these outworlders, and they end up sort of turning him into a bad guy for a little bit until his brother kind of, gets on him enough. And then all of a sudden, they both turn into the hero, or they, one's still kind of the anti-hero because he's kind of a criminal. And, I don't know. You see how I'm saying this kind of dynamic between the two of them. What do you guys think about that?
That works for me. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it can work.
Cool. Reed, can we hear the unique pet now?
Yeah. A cop from the one of the outworlders that they had called one of the more successful outworld colonies was on an Earth-type planet, but somewhat denser,
right,
with a little bit stronger gravity. And one of the things that had happened, there had been over the generations an evolution where these guys tend to be kind of thicker framed and, in light Earth, a little bit super powered, not super powered, but just like somebody that is like really, really worked out. And
right.
And it's more than just, hey, that guy is really, ripped, right? It's more like he just has the muscle mass and the bone density to handle greater stresses than
right.
Yeah. And he gave this cop hero guy. We haven't got a name. I haven't got a name for him.
I came up with the name of the other one. So
yeah. Anyway, he gave him a pup. He gave him a police dog pup from the off-world. And so this police dog pup is a very powerful beast. Growing up as a puppy, he really showed off early on that he was a really smart kind of, just think of a Belgian, I don't know how to pronounce it, Malinois, like, you know what I'm talking about? They look kind of like a German Shepherd with a much blacker face, and they're just really acrobatic and
yeah, absolutely.
Just picture somebody, like a dog with skills like that, except kind of in the frame of like a Newfoundland. And he named his pup Thud because he's a big, heavy dog, and when he sat down, he kind of thud on the floor, and he's got a big, happy dog disposition, and he can be a little overwhelming for the uninitiated, but he's really smart. He's one that really picks up on quickly on, when somebody's not on the level. Like, and if somebody is up to, like dogs will recognize fear, they'll recognize dominance, they will recognize a bad guy,
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so Thud is this guy's dog, and he's just a trip, and he's one of these guys, like, if he disarms you, you've been disarmed, put it that way.
Right. Cool.
So anyway, that's Thud. I want him, but okay.
Seth, you got any interesting world building stuff?
I've got the wise old man, but
let's hear it.
Okay. So there's actually 3 of them. Not anything particular to do with Ka-Tet, but they're just 3 different ones. And they each kind of take a different approach, right? With kind of the way that the world has gone. One of them lives in the city, runs like a bar or restaurant.
Right.
And kind of has like a disposition of not like just putting your head down and getting by, but seeing what the outworlders are doing and how to like not be caught up too far one way or the other, but like navigate and be a part of what's happening, right?
Right.
Thus, he lives in the city. He has his establishment. He's kind of, I'm not say a part of the system, but operating inside of kind of what's going on as it's moving about. The second one, the hermit, lives out in the boonies, right, and is kind of a figure that gives advice, and kind of as people are seeing, and they might not like what's going on, and they've got all this technology, it's way beyond what they're kind of naturally coming up to, either whether they think it's good or bad, right, or whatever, but just kind of separating from that, and then kind of directs people like how to function or move away from it without like being a part of it and kind of being their own thing off,
Right.
away from all of that. And then the third one, not an anarchist, but is kind of a figure, because I think we talked about, you have these people that, they're fighting the system, but, a lot of times they're just destroying just to do that, for no particular reason except for that, either they're not in power, it's easier to just fight the problem instead of actually making a solution to the problem. He's not like this, but he kind of sits in a position where he'll come in and counsel or turn people aside from that path and then help them find a fight worth fighting.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
obviously, as it is, there's some of them that are bad, right? And so instead of just fighting all of them for no particular reason, except they're the outworlders or, it's not what I'm used to, right? So it's kind of like addressing all three different sides of it. And they all kind of take a figure. I'm pretty sure they know each other.
Yeah.
Maybe they were all companions in a rebellion years ago, and then they all kind of settled into their own understanding of it. And one is kind of settled in it, sees what they're doing, and tries his best to kind of, calm tensions, see the broader picture, work within what's going on, not compromising on what's wrong or right, but just kind of, this is what's going on. This is how you just kind of, navigate properly in the system. And then one of them has then like a hermit moved out, right? Lives in his like kind of private compound away from society, and people come to him for like, wisdom and stuff, that direction. And then the other one kind of sits in a lot of like the rebellions, but also is a figure that is trying to find like people who are tied into this for the right reasons, but going the wrong direction, and will take them under their wing and then like recreate different, let's say, I hate to say terrorist groups, but militia groups that then have the right reason and what to actually fight.
Right. Well, he takes and
so anyway, so it's actually three of them, and I'd say they probably all know each other. My guess is that they were probably part of, some rebellion at some point. Obviously, it didn't happen, and then they've kind of settled into society in their own ways. Like I said, the hermit, the one that kind of now is kind of accepted and traverses the system, and the other one that is still on the rebellious side, but is more focused on hopefully catching, the young and naive that get caught up in not rebellion or revolution, for the right reasons, but in the wrong direction.
Cool. I like the fact that there's three of them.
Yeah, that's a great wrinkle. I like it.
And I think I was thinking of a name, although, maybe language and names and stuff have changed. So I was thinking like, what would it be? It would be Martu, Luth, and Marth.
I don't know what any of those things mean.
Martu, Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Martu, Marth, and Luth. I think that's kind of congruent. I don't know. It sounds nice.
Yeah.
Anyways, those are the wise old men.
That's so great. Well, our hero and anti-hero have someone to go to depending on what it is they want to do with their life. And there has like, what's the big problem? That's the kind of the great question of the age. Every great spy movie needs a Russian asset or a Chinese spy. Yeah. There's the ring to be destroyed. What's the big bad thing? Part of me was thinking that this dream that Chase keeps having is like not an uncommon dream. It's not it's a dream that a lot of people have. So it's kind of like some people view it as a prophecy. Some people view it as like a doomsday thing. That's kind of a thing I was thinking about, is that this is something that everyone is experiencing. That's just an idea I had.
Yeah, we'll have to see what it might mean on the next.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you liked this episode, if you thought it was interesting and informative, educational, and edifying, I would love to know that. Send me a email with the letter E as the subject and a message if you want to send me one as well at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. Otherwise, send me a message on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We would love to hear from you. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. Everyone deserves to listen to a little story before bed or on the way to work or wherever you happen to be. And until next time, don't forget to wait because it gets better.